Hello, hello, and welcome back to the show. It's called Divine Dingo, and I am your host. My name is Ashley. Da 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 da. That's right, my first name is Ashley, and my last name is da 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 da. What's up, guys? Welcome back. That was my I was gonna say that was like my choir. That was my chorus of people, but then I realized I said my name is Ashley, so I'm obviously a fucking liar if I say that. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here. I am currently in an empty, echoey apartment, so sorry if this is coming in hot and loud. No promises that I'm going to edit it so that it is more... I don't know. I think my brain is leaving me. Sure, I think we all say that when we do something dumb. We're like, oh, the energy, right? My brain. No promise that I'll edit it so that it is better for your listening. Better for your listening? See? What are words? What is English? Somebody get me a dictionary so I can study it and learn more words, because I always felt like reading the dictionary was going to do that for me. Anyways, sorry for that rant. Where did that come from? I am moving. That's why my apartment's empty. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen my post. But yeah, I just kind of put in my 30-day notice at my job and in my apartment on the same day, kind of on a whim, just like I need to make a change. And so my plan is to move back to the East Coast to be closer to family. But while I'm on the way there, I'm going to drive across country and I'm just going to go into the Southwest, and I'm going to volunteer at some animal sanctuaries and some other places along the way, and probably spend anywhere from 2 to 5 months on the road. So, no, I won't be like living in my car, but I will be camping and then like volunteering at different places along the way. So it'll get me out of my comfort zone, shake some shit up. I needed to do something different. So yeah, that's one update. I am planning on still offering readings while I'm on the road. So I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but I will keep you guys updated if that's something that you're interested in. I am offering hour-long and half-hour-long animal communications for animals that are living or transitioned, and I'm also now offering hour and half-hour-long animal consciousness general chats, and those are sessions that you can get if you have any questions about how to communicate with your animal. If you want to tell me a really rad story about your experiences growing up. I had somebody book it that was just like, I know that I'm supposed to be connecting with animals. Do you have any advice? And then we just kind of like shot the shit for a while. I told them some of my experiences. They told me some of theirs. And we kind of worked through these things together, like where you're stuck in kind of, wherever, and if, obviously it can be about animal consciousness, and, I just kind of like, let it flow, baby, let it flow. But we're all coming together because we love animals. And that's why I love making this podcast and kind of putting it out there for you guys. So I will keep the Instagram updated while I'm on the road to let you know when I have readings available. And I love doing readings with you guys, and I would love to hear from you. So I'm also going to be trying to stay on top of the podcast while I'm on the road. That is my goal, but I know that I'm going to be in places where there might not be Wi-Fi or cell reception for extended periods of time. And I'm really just kind of like trying to hit a major refresh button. But like I said, I love doing the podcast, and the podcast brings me so much life and so much joy. So anyways, those are my updates for you. So, oh, and also, if you love me like I know you do, would you be willing to rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts and I guess other places, but Apple Podcasts is the main one? That would be so great. And I would love you forever for it. And your dog will love you forever for it. Your dog probably already loves you, but who's to say they won't love you more if you give me 5-star review? Chances are pretty good that they will love you more. Can you imagine your dog loving you more? That's what it could be like if you rate and review this podcast. But of course I am kidding, and I could never tell you how much your dog loves or does not love you, but I am nothing if not funny. So there you have it. Okay, well, I've got my list in front of me of all the shit I needed to tell you guys before this episode. Check, check, check. Looks like we're done. So now we can get to the good stuff, and that is introducing my guest today, who is Kathryn Solie. I invited Kathryn Solie on to the podcast after I took her level 1 poisonous plant medicine course, and I learned about plant consciousness for the first time. And I had a friend who you may know by the name of Moth Mana, who took Kathryn's class when I first met Mana, and I didn't feel drawn to it at the time, but I was really interested in this like poisonous plant community. So I started following a few people on Instagram just to like see what it was about. And then Kathryn posted that she had, I don't know, it was like a week left before this level 1 class started. And I read the description and I was like, holy shit, this class sounds amazing. And I feel like it is a class where I'm just going to grow a lot and learn about things that I maybe haven't considered from the perspective of a person who has spent a lot of their life learning and growing in this area. And so the class was amazing. Learned a lot. I highly recommend checking her out, going to her website, which I will link in the show notes, and getting to know her and getting to know her offerings, and then even getting to know like the poisonous plant community and learning about if you're called to it, obviously, but just seeing what's out there in a world of plant consciousness and plant communication and what that looks like. And I think for me, exploring this side of the natural world and of consciousness and collective energy really just expanded my abilities and my offerings and the way that I view the world. And so anyways, I had her on today, and we obviously talk about poisonous plants. We talk about animal consciousness. We talk about death, reincarnation, just a lot of great topics. And I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with her, and I know that you'll really enjoy this episode. So without further ado, please welcome Kathryn Solie. Well, let's start out talking about, you obviously have a connection and are comfortable communicating with plant consciousness and thinking about what plant consciousness is. But I wanted to ask you if you've ever, not if you've ever, because I'm sure that you've had, but what communicating with animals looks like for you. And if you have like a story about that. And it can be something as simple from day-to-day life with an animal growing up. It can be as woo as you want and as esoteric as you want, or as just as simple as you want. I just want to start the conversation there.
A couple of different things come to mind, and these will all be woo.
Good.
Let's see, this was like 10 years ago, and I was studying with my teacher at the time. His name's Robert Blond. We were doing metaphysics, meditation, stuff like that. And one of the lessons was around thought form projection. And I was a nanny at the time. I was nannying for a little girl. And it was actually around this time of year. It was like springtime. And she was saying that she wanted to see a robin because that means that spring is coming. And I did this like thought form projection, basically, sending out kind of like a radio signal to all the robins in the area to like come see us if they wanted to. And within 5 minutes, there were like 10 robins in this small yard in Denver. And I was like, okay, I can't really like deny that, that was happening. Yeah, I mean, I view animal communication really similarly as plant communication, where they have a different type of consciousness than we do, but it's still consciousness, and we can still communicate with them and like understand their language if we learn it, if we're like open to it. Yeah, and I'm a little hesitant to tell this story, but just because it is like probably out there for people, for certain people. And I also don't want it to become like dogmatic. Like people hear me say this and think that this is how it happens every time. But my dog recently passed away in December. And through his dying process, it was actually a really beautiful experience. I mean, leading up to it was really sad, and it was sad through the experience. But in the day, basically, of his passing was, and the day, actually the 2 days leading up to it, I was in like kind of an altered state of consciousness, like for days, just like super present, super connected with him. Everything was just slowed down. That's a lot, like anyone who's kind of been present with someone who's dying, I think will often have that experience where everything, you just become like really present because each moment is so precious. And the day that he died, we were able to have a vet come over and do it at home, and we're able to, he had to be put down. So gave him the injections while I'm holding him, and I was able to hold him for a little while. And my partner and I were kind of sitting with him for a few minutes. And the way that I see a lot of things is I appreciate you giving me the, be as woo as you want. And because if I say things like this in normal, or like not normal, but the greater collective, I'm a crazy person. But so I was seeing his like soul, basically his little energetic being kind of leaving his body. And he was really confused at first. He was like barking, kind of trying to get back. Like there's like this barrier where he was trying to get back into his body. And so I spent probably like a half an hour just sitting with him and helping him go through this like doorway to where there was this kind of light filled space through this doorway. And I was watching like layer after layer of his energetic bodies going, like first, like the lightest kind of most energy, most like upper, whatever, lighter energy bodies going. And the last was kind of his little like traumas, his little like, it was more gray, and the fear. And he had a lot of, I found him on the street when he was little, and he had like still had these anxieties and neurotic tendencies that he carried through his whole life. But like the second that I felt that last layer move through that door, my partner was like, I think I just felt him leave. And then for the rest of the day, I would go in and out of kind of connecting with him in this kind of space, this like light filled space where he was just, I think it was a lot of confusion for his soul, still trying to like get his footing and like, what is the space that I'm in? And there was, my partner and I made like an agreement not to like cry that day, not to like try to draw his soul back and, back here to like help him move forward. But there was like a moment where my partner started to get sad, and I kind of went in it with him. And then also in that moment, I could feel Steve is my dog. I could feel Steve coming back, like being drawn back, because we were like, calling him back. And then at that moment, I realized that way that I helped him kind of go through that door, I could help him continue on his journey to like finding his next body, basically. And when I checked back in with him later, I was like seeing these kind of cones of energy, like all these different wombs that he could choose to incarnate into. And I could kind of see what this life would be like. Like there's like this beagle, he could go live there, be a beagle, and he would have like live kind of on a farm and have a lot of freedom. But I've got the feeling the owner was like kind of abusive. And so I was like, okay, I don't really like that. And he was a Yorkie, Steve. And I saw there was like this other Yorkie body that he could incarnate into, but that was like, he would have the same kind of neurotic, like little dog stuff. Like little dogs have that tendency to have those things. And the body that he was like most drawn into, that I felt like was the best choice too, was this husky. This husky. And I could like see his like energetic imprint, his soul, whatever you want to call it, moving through this like cone into this husky like womb. and kind of like saw him like implant there. And then over the next couple weeks while he was in gestation, I would still kind of, I could feel into him. And my partner and I looked up, like, what's the gestation period of a husky? And we got it into our heads, it was 3 months. So I was thinking, this is 3 months. But then about 2 months later, we both were having a lot of dreams about Steve. And I had this moment where I was like falling asleep at night in the in-between space of dream and waking. And I heard like a puppy, like a little puppy kind of cry. And I heard it literally with my ears, you know, where the dream world and the senses kind of cross. And I was like, oh, I think Steve was just born. He was born into his new body, was now like gone through the birthing experience. And then we looked it up, and it's the gestation period is 2 months, not 3 months. And it was, yeah, it felt like, okay, he's like left the womb, he's being reborn. And it's been like a month since that happened. And just slowly over time, I'm like less and less, I feel him less and less. Like that stream, he's like imprinting more and more into his new body, and like leaving more and more behind his previous incarnation with me, which is kind of sad for me on like a personal level. But it's been one of the most like beautiful opening experiences of my life, because I've read about things like this in like the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the American Book of the Dead, and like the process of, for humans, you know, like the process of what happens when the soul leaves the body, and so on. But actually like kind of getting this front row seat, and because him and I were so connected, and where we were like super enmeshed in waking life and day-to-day life, it was so easy for me to like follow his progress through like finding his next incarnation. And then one thing that I forgot to say that is one of like the most beautiful parts of the whole story was that when I was watching him, you know, choose this husky body, like go down this cone of energy into this womb, it was the same thing where like each energetic layer, body layers were going in, like first the lighter layers. And then it was finally like the last part that didn't want to go was that like gray kind of trauma that, and I was trying to do the same thing I did before, like help guide each body into the womb. And the funnel closed before the trauma could go in. It was like, I'm not taking this with me this time. Which gives me like a lot of peace, just knowing he's not, because I think he was weaned too young. So he was always sucking on things his whole life. Like I tried all different kinds of things to like help mitigate this. He had really bad separation anxiety, just had like a lot of trauma basically. And I couldn't, there was just I could only get like a certain amount to like settle in him his whole life. And just knowing he's not like taking that on moving forward, and knowing he's going to be in like this big husky body, I just feel like he's moving on to something like a level up.
Like literally just a bigger body and a whole nother, like I feel that when animals, when they incarnate, they're having like their soul experience that was individual to Steve, right? But then they're also having the experience of being a Yorkie. And so like now Steve is still like, you know, his essence is still that will follow him in all his incarnations, but now he's like Steve, who is a husky. And so it's just like these other layers like coming together. And I also know from my experiences, and I guess know is a pretty bold word to use, but I feel that animals don't hold trauma the way that humans do, like life to life to life. I feel like they're kind of like outside of this kind of karmic washing machine that we find ourselves in, either collectively or just from life to life. You know, if you were a great person in a past life who was always so giving, in this life you might always be taking, you know. And it's like I think that I think that something about animal consciousness that separates them from human consciousness is that they're not here to like learn these really hard lessons. They're here to like experience. And I think that
Mm.
that's like maybe they're here to experience, and then that's kind of the umbrella experience of their lives, and then like little things fall off of that. But humans are, there's so much trauma that we like choose to take, and it, people kind of believe, and I feel like I'm one of those people, that we are like, when we're in a higher dimension, as multifaceted like energetic beings, that we kind of get bored of living in euphoria, because it's like we're all, we, when we leave this life we may go back to it and we're like, oh yeah, this is like ecstasy, this is, we're all one big thing, and then we're like, okay, well, I kind of, I'm bored and I want to experience like the fullness of life. So I want to go be a human and suffer. Um, like, let's add some
Yeah,
spice to this ecstasy. Let's
the
suffer.
the tree of
Um,
knowledge.
yeah. I wonder too if you, because when you were talking, I was kind of seeing this connection that you had with Steve, and you were able to, I love that his name was Steve, by the way.
He was a great dog.
I love when dogs have just human dude names. Like
Yeah.
Steve is a good one. I've met a dog named Brian, which is hilarious.
I know. And what was weird was, so I found him on the street, and I was like, the day I found him, and I tried to find his owners. I didn't like steal this dog,
Yeah.
but and wasn't able to find them after like a few weeks. But I was like, I think his name's Steve. And then I called my mom and told her I found a dog, and I was like, what should I name him? And she was like, Steve. It's like, okay, I guess that's his name then, because like that's wasn't expecting her to say that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if if you were interested in trying to connect with Steve in the future, like say now until whenever, that you might have to like look at it from like a different perspective, because maybe what you were connecting with was like your profound connection in this life with Steve was like what allowed you to kind of see it from an energetic perspective. And you were saying that you could feel him kind of like the connection. What is the word that you use? But you could just feel it kind of like
waning.
leaving.
Yeah.
Because I believe that in work that I've done with people who want to connect with animals that have passed on, that are like 3 incarnations away from what they were, you can always connect with them.
Yeah.
Like that energy imprint is always there. And I guess I believe that to be true with the animals that I've had pass as well. Like I've done, when I was younger, you know, like teenage to early 20s, I had a dog that was like a family dog, and I didn't give her the life that I didn't realize that she wanted so much out of life, like going to like dog parks and being like super social, like because she also came from a lot of trauma, and I just didn't see that for her for the first several years that I had her. And then I worked at a dog daycare and I brought her there, and she like lit up. And she was this like tiny little dog, but she would play with these like American bulldogs that probably had 100 pounds on her, and she wasn't afraid, and she just had so much fun. And so something clicked in my head. I was like, oh, I'm going to bring her here more. And then maybe like a month later, she got lymphatic cancer. And so like she started going downhill. And so like I've kind of always carried this like regret that I didn't see her. You know, I was so caught up in like being a teenager, you know, and a young 20-year-old in my early 20s. And I just didn't like actively work with her. So anyways, I tap into her energy. And I know that she's incarnated as like a dog again or something else, but she's like moved on, obviously, after being gone from her doggy form for like 6 years. But anyways, I've done like work with her, like forgiveness, you know, asking her for forgiveness. And so but I feel like I'm connecting with like CJ, you know, I'm connecting with that energy. It's just like, it's like we have, if you believe this, which I do, but we have like higher selves and we have like higher versions of ourselves. I feel like I was just connecting with the highest version of CJ, which can be a dog, it can be a bird, a human, it can be whatever. And so like that is where the healing came from. And so I'm sure that it would be the same with Steve, and you would call it Steve, but it would be like, who knows what the
Yeah.
energy. When you saw his soul and like all the layers, were they kind of like formless, or did they look like little versions of his body?
They were less formless, like the higher that they were, like
Mm,
more like light. And then like as it got, even his like that trauma body wasn't really form. It was kind of like it was just energy,
hmm.
but it was more solid, like the lower down it
Yeah.
got. Yeah.
It's really beautiful that you saw the cones too, because it literally just like I almost see it as like a factory. It's like soul comes in and like it's like
Yeah. Yeah. It was
plopped
like
out
a
into a new body.
portal.
Yeah,
Portal.
like a portal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
appreciate you saying that. I do feel like I could stay connected with that like stream that was Steve for a long time. It's also going through this experience. Part of my background is in Tibetan Buddhism, and they have this practice with tulkus where they go and like
Mhm.
a monk, a high ranking being dies in the physical, and then they go find them like in their next incarnation. Like the monks will basically, I don't know exactly how, obviously, how the process works, but to me, it seems like they're following some pull or some sign to like go in a certain direction, and they'll take objects from this person's life and show them to children, and the children, may or may not be able to identify if they are supposedly the incarnation of this being, they're able to identify their like prayer wheel or whatever it is. And I've always been really skeptical of that. I'm like, kind of like, well, why? My thought was always like, well, why would someone keep choosing to like incarnate in basically the same lineage, like the same experience again and again, and like skeptical of if people could actually find like a soul stream. But seeing this experience, I'm like, if I really wanted to put the energy into it, which I don't really, but I feel like I could find where this husky is, and like I could track, it opened up a lot of things, like dropped into place in my mind after this experience, like things that I had read about that I was skeptical of. Now I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe there's some truth in that.
Hmm. And I
Yeah.
wonder too, they talk about in different religions and spiritual practices like soul contracts or soul agreements. And so I wonder too, with that, like that reincarnating as a human all the time, and like I guess they to some degree that soul is like, okay, I'll always come back and I'll
Mm-hmm.
always be a human and I'll always follow this path. And I guess I do believe that some souls are here to like anchor on like
Mm-hmm.
onto the earth and stay on the earth, as to like work as like antennas to keep us ascending and keep us moving, because like even in dark times there are still quote enlightened people,
Thank
that have
God.
agreed to be here. And it's like I would not consider myself to be I consider myself to be like I guess I believe there's no way that like realities beyond the human perception don't exist, because of when I break down how many realities there are, just like, my body is an entire ecosystem inside of itself. I don't know if ecosystem's the right word, but there's so much happening inside. There's so much life
Mm-hmm.
inside, and it's just like operating without me having to think about it. So that's one reality within this world. And there's like the human reality where it's like there's all these morals and rules, and we all like socially accept them to some degree. And then you think about dolphins and how they communicate. And so that's a whole separate reality and a whole separate world, but it's in the world of our world. And I thought I just had like this moment on my hike the other day. I had to like stop and put my hand on a tree because it was like so much information. I was like, there's so many worlds within the worlds. Um, and you
Yeah.
hear like, um, I have friends and people that I've talked to on this podcast that talk about other realities as like higher dimensional realities, and it can get like really woo and esoteric and energy and stuff. And sometimes like I'm still learning about all of that. And so for me, I find that it's easiest to like see those higher dimensions when I realize that like I'm walking in the woods and I see moss, and if you look at it really closely, it looks like tiny little trees. And then you see a little bug and you're like, this is your whole world. Like this is a
Mm-hmm.
whole other like paradigm and experience that is like right next to mine. So like why couldn't we um believe, or like it's not even about perception, but it's just believing that like there are dimensions higher than ours and energetic worlds and energetic experiences. And like I was just thinking about how all that we believe to be true is just from like our a human perception of the world. And it's just like such a
Yeah.
human centric and an egocentric kind of understanding of things. And just with like plant consciousness too, it's like in taking your class, it's like and maybe you can talk about this more, but if you're connecting with, like, I have my peace lily in front of me, but like the spirit of like peace lily, and does that like vary from individual like plants? Because there's like, with me, I guess with I think this is so random, but squirrel energy is one that I feel like is really common from squirrel to squirrel.
Love
I just have,
squirrels.
I know, me too. I just went on a walk before this podcast and I was just like, what is animal consciousness? And I was trying to like, ask myself this question. And then a squirrel looked at me dead in the eye. And then I usually try to like give it a lot of space so that they don't feel the need to like run across the street. So I was doing that. I was like walking around the tree and he like climbed up the tree and made eye contact with me for like 30 seconds. And anyways, I was just like, all you squirrels feel like it's just like the same energy. But like when I connect in with like dogs or cats, it really does feel like, while I do connect with like feline or canine energy and that essence is there, just like we were talking about with Steve being a Yorkie or like a Husky, there's like an agreement. They're also so individual. And so like I'm wondering, is that the same in your experience with like plant consciousness?
I think plant consciousness is more like that like squirrel type thing where each plant kind of has its unique vibrational signature. But then the way that we relate to it, like each person will have a different experience depending on where they're at. So there's like a lot of for example, like the Torah, there's like a general kind of consensus that like this is the general unique vibrational signature of the Torah, but then each person is coming from a different background, from different life experiences. They're needing to hear different things in different moments. So there can be sometimes people meet the Torah, if we're going off of like imagery, seeing different imagery, sometimes people will meet the Torah as like a mountain. Sometimes people meet it as an old woman. Sometimes people meet the Torah as a young woman. It's as a spider, as a snake, like all these different kinds of archetypal images that have a kind of similar thread, but there's like different variations depending on where the person's at. Like there's kind of these like it's like a puzzle, like the plant and the person are these different puzzle pieces, and which piece of the plant you get in the moment is kind of dependent on what your puzzle piece looks like, if that makes sense. It's there's a lot of variation for people meeting plant consciousness, but then I think that but it's just like with people, like me talking to you right now, you're getting one side of me. The way that I am with my partner is different. The way I am with my best friend is different. The way that I would be with like my nephew or, just with different people. The way I would be teaching a class, the way I'd be at the grocery store. It's like all these different kind of expressions of myself, but there's this kind of overarching thread that carries through that's like me, that people can usually feel from me, but they'll get a different experience, and then other people will project different things onto me. Some people might hear me talking and they think I'm aloof, or some people might think I'm really sweet, or some people might, and whether or not that's true, I don't know. There's like all this projection that comes from people as well, which can happen with the plants too, where people project different things onto the plants, fears and desires and things like that. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles to like true plant consciousness communication, is that unconscious projections that we can have onto. It's probably similar with animals, like people. I'm thinking of like somebody, I won't name them, that I love very dearly, but like I think, and this is a common thing where people will be like, oh, my dog is so hungry, like I'll just keep feeding them. And but like they're actually hungry, and then the dog becomes, you know, like overweight because the person is projecting their own like desire for food onto the dog. Or my dog's depressed, but it really like the owner's depressed and they're projecting it onto the dog, and they're not really hearing maybe what the dog or the cat needs because their own like fears and desires get in the way. Does that make sense? Does that like,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, I work with people who um and I've like hesitated to say this in readings sometimes because
Yeah.
people call me to get messages about their animals, and then I end up giving them messages about themselves based on like what they think is happening with
Mm,
their animal. And it's like they can be mirrors for us. And
totally.
I was thinking that when you were talking about like plants, I'm like, it seems like plant consciousness
Mm,
can mirror what, and it shows us. And so it's important to like not take things at like face value all the time when you are like, and I mean, obviously like, and it can come down to like kind of basic dog behavior understandings of like, if you have an anxious person, you have an anxious dog. And so that's
yeah.
kind of like, I have friends who have dogs that like are super anxious, and then they're like, oh, I don't know why. And then like I'll take them to a dog park, or I'll take them because I like do a lot of dog sitting. And they're fine, they're independent,
Mm,
they're free, and like it's just like a different energy. And I'm not saying like I don't consider myself to be like a animal professional at all, but it's like it's just different because I'm not living with that dog every day, that like my energy isn't like imprinted onto them.
right.
They're so like highly sensitive. And I think that's with, obviously, if you live with any human, you're going to imprint onto them a little bit. If you
Hmm.
spend time, I'm really sensitive, so if I spend time around somebody who is like really worried about money all the time, I might get really worried about
Mm-hmm.
money. But if I sit with myself, I'm like, actually, I'm okay. And so I think that it's like we're all kind
Yeah.
of imprinting onto each other, and I think that animals just happen to be like super sensitive. So yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, that makes me think too, just about like people in general and just like the media that we consume and how much that affects us. Like if we're only getting, I mean, anyway, I don't want to go like political, but if we're only getting like one news perspective and it's like
Hmm.
very narrow, then that's what is going to be important to us. That's what we're going to think is going on in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that we like to put ourselves in boxes because it's like safer to like feel like we are in control of understanding our reality. And that can
Yeah.
go to news, or it can go to like, something that you and I probably struggle with in our work. It's like our understanding of plants. It is like this way, it is this box, and that's it, or our
Mm-hmm.
understanding of like animals. I mean, people didn't start, major science didn't start even entertaining the idea of animals having emotions until like the 70s, which is like,
Oh my
I know,
God.
until
I
the
saw
70s, like,
something recently that was basically like, I didn't look into beyond the headline because I was just like, I don't even want to know. That was seemed like it was like basically like we tortured animals and we found that they felt pain or they were like felt, and it's like, wow, you really needed to do that, or are you like
yeah,
psychotic? What?
that just shows how disconnected we
Yeah,
are,
how disconnected. It's the same, like I feel kind of, when I see people and I'll say this and then I'll do a little caveat because I see people like chop down a tree or something, just seeing it as like an object, like an old tree
Mhm,
that really like shouldn't be removed from where it's at. It's
mhm,
um, uh, the disconnect that people feel, from that this is like a conscious living being that might be even older than you, and you're just gonna like end its life without checking in with it or without kind of consulting with the space around the land. But then I'm giving this caveat because then I think people hear them, they're like, well, what about if I have weeds in my garden? And like, yeah, like sometimes you do have to
mhm.
remove, but I think it can be done in like a non-violent way. Um, but yeah, it is disturbing to see that disconnect, and it makes total sense when we look at kind of how school systems are and how we're all like conditioned to just be material reductionistic, that the only thing that's real is these bodies and stuff and money, and that's all that's important. And yeah, we don't grow our own food, we're not connected to the land anymore.
Hmm.
So of course, most people can't hear that anymore. It's like been conditioned out of them.
Yeah, I did a year in AmeriCorps. Well, I did 2 years in AmeriCorps, but one of them, I cut down a lot of trees. Like that was
Mm,
a lot of my work, and it was, land management, conservation. So it was invasive tree
hmm.
species.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it too was like invasive species, and some of them were more like plant material, but then some of them were more like tree material. So it's like you either sprayed chemicals on the plants. I'm like touching my peace lily, being like, I'm so sorry I did that. I'm like, so sorry. But I think that I really enjoyed like using a chainsaw and cutting down trees. It
Mm,
was exciting for me. But then going back now and looking on it, there's like a lot of grief around
mm,
because I wasn't conscious doing it. It was just like I was just having an experience. It was really hard, laborious work. So I was waking up basically just trying to get through the day, and then you're using a chainsaw and you're around a bunch. It's like a lot of masculine energy and a lot of
mhm.
like, well, we as humans like need to manage this land. I just think about like just cutting down the trees, and while there was some sort of purpose to it at the time, I wasn't conscious about it. And anyways, I'm just like I love trees. Like if I am connected to any sort of natural thing that's not an animal, it's trees, anything from the
Mm,
natural world. And that job, we were working in primarily oak savanna. So, and we were in like southeastern Minnesota. And so it's like the rolling hills, bluff country, oak savanna everywhere. And that's where I really fell in love with the natural world because all of my coworkers had like degrees in natural sciences. So we would just walk around and they would like show me how to identify different plants and then tell
mm,
me all of the features, and then I could go around and then they would teach me how to identify trees, and I would have to like listen sometimes because there was like a lot of cottonwoods, and you can tell if it's cottonwood if you listen to it because it's one of the only trees where the leaves are close enough that they actually touch and they make
mm.
this certain sound. And other trees, you think that you hear them like rustling in the wind, but it's like it's a subtle difference. But anyways, like it's just kind of interesting the contrast between kind of unconsciously going through and like cutting down trees, but then like building this intimate relationship with the natural world, like while I was
Yeah.
doing it. Um, Anyways, I still struggle with how much I loved using the chainsaw and cutting down trees. Because it was just like exhilarating and like adrenaline, to cut down something that's like 80 feet tall, and you're just like this like young woman. And so there's all this like societal, like, yeah, I
Mm.
can cut down this tree and no, I don't need your help, sir. But then yeah, just like going through it unconsciously. And I just love trees. So now in my life, I just tried to I just talk to the trees more. And I mean, I was like, I know I've always talked to them even before I cut them down. I just kind of be like, yo, what's up? I'm about to cut you down. I'm really
Mm.
sorry. We have to,
Yeah.
but anyways, the more conscious I become, I just think like, what are the boundaries with that? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like moving parts to what you're talking about too. Even like thinking about like invasive, I'm doing air quotes,
Hmm.
invasive species.
Hmm.
It came up, I taught a class last night and someone was asking about it. It's like such a heated, I was like, I don't even want to talk
Yeah.
about it because
Hmm.
it's like such a divisive topic. But yeah, land management, like I feel like that's part of our job to like steward the land.
Hmm.
But I don't know that, I mean, I don't think that we do a very good job in like modern
Right.
society of stewarding, even like when we try to.
It's
Um,
probably because there's no like consciousness brought to it or like reverence,
yeah,
We're
yeah,
coming at it from that like science, like plants are this, they're in this box, this is
right,
how we should treat them.
right.
And
These
people
are
also
bad
do that.
plants.
Right,
These are good
right.
ones.
Yeah, and I think so I'm like highly allergic. I didn't realize this until I left Virginia. But I'm like highly allergic to poison oak and poison ivy.
Mm,
And I've had it like full body, And so I experienced poison ivy in the Midwest, and then now I live on the West Coast, and I had to learn about poison oak the hard way. So anyways, but I don't believe that we should go through and like remove all the poison oak or the poison ivy. And that's never really crossed my mind. But I think and I was thinking about this on my walk, that's like a deeper issue of this thing in the natural world inconveniences me. So let's get rid of it. And that can be with poisonous plants. And that can also be with like, nuisance, I'm doing air quotes, nuisance animals. Just like, I mean, a great example, I believe it was in Yellowstone where all the farmers just started killing all of the wolves. And then like the ecosystem got totally fucked up. And there was just so much like overgrowth and then like too many deer. And then basically like it stopped, like the water flow was different. The season, like everything changed, like things that you wouldn't even consider, that would be affected by removing one type of animal. Like the entire ecosystem was thrown off. And so I think that that's the same with, I guess I don't know much about like poisonous plants in the wild. I just try to avoid poison oak, but I don't love the idea of like, oh, this is a place where people hike, so we should just go and spray chemicals all over the poison oak or like burn it or something to like get rid of it.
Don't burn it.
I know, don't burn it. I know. Don't breathe it in.
Yeah.
But I don't love that we are humans. We need the world to always be convenient and safe for us all the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gross. It's like very disconnected. But it makes total sense that that's how the majority of people view nature, because we've had like constant propaganda and conditioning in many, many different facets for hundreds of years that basically has gotten us to this point. I mean, it's getting worse, I think, but yeah, I mean, well, and poison ivy and poison oak are interesting to me, for obvious reasons. I'm like interested in poisonous plants, air quotes again. I like to kind of put quotes around poisonous plants because Paracelsus said something like, nothing is without poison. The dose is what makes the poison. So like if you drink too much water, it kills you. But in very minute doses, something as highly poisonous as monkshood can be life-saving. Or foxglove. A lot of our modern heart medicines come from a foxglove derivative. So, but poison ivy, I think about that. I have a connection to poison ivy. I haven't really met poison oak, interacted with that one as much, but I think about like, what's their role in the ecosystem? And I think of them as protectors, as they're like protecting the land from humans, basically, like stay out of this area. Most animals don't have a reaction to poison ivy. It's humans. A lot of animals eat poison ivy. And I think it's somewhere, if I want to like find this percentage, I think the amount of poison ivy growing has gone up drastically since the 1960s. It's doubled. Poison ivy's growth and the potency has doubled since the 1960s.
Wow.
So not only is there more poison ivy, but the urushiol, which is what you're probably allergic to, has increased in its potency. And this is due to having more, I'm blanking on, higher carbon dioxide levels in the air. But I also am kind of like, well, since the 1960s, the environmental destruction has probably more than doubled. And I think like, what are they sending us in plants? Like giant hogweed is this really cool plant, amazing plant. It looks like a Queen Anne's lace, but they grow giant. They grow to be like 14 feet tall. They can be super tall, but the sap in them is phototoxic and they can cause really severe burns on your skin. If you get it on your skin and then the skin gets exposed to sunlight, they can cause you to go blind. And this is a plant that's native to Eurasia, but it's been spreading more, and it's showing up more and more in the US, and people are panicking when it shows up because it can be so hurtful to humans who don't interact with it properly. But I'm like, well, what is that telling us? That these plants are growing more, they're spreading more, like they're telling us something. And then our response is like, let's spray it with poison, or let's, not saying that you should keep a bunch of poison ivy in your yard if your kids want to play there, but it's like, what are the plants telling us, and we're not hearing.
Yeah, I got it sounds like you're describing wild parsnip. Is that kind of?
Oh, that's one of its names. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I got wild parsnip my first year in AmeriCorps. We were boarding up vacant homes, and some homes hadn't been maintenanced in like, I don't know, 10, 20 years. So we'd have to like go through a bunch of overgrowth. And like I got wild parsnip when it was dormant. There were no it was like fall or winter or something. And I got it all down my forearms. And it was like the biggest. I thought about I was supposed to be in this program for 10 months. I think I was in it for 2 months at this point. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going home. This is miserable. I was like, throw it all away, throw the experience away. Cause it also would spread through but like poison ivy, it's a common misconception that if you itch it, it spreads that way. And that's only if you still have the oil on your skin. And so like, if you get exposed to it and you totally, I mean, I do like Dawn dish soap, which is terrible for your body. I mean, I've never had drier skin, but all the oil's gone. And so then then I'm free to scratch it. You know what I mean? Because then now I know that it's not going to spread all over. And anyways, with the wild parsnip, I'm pretty sure it was the opposite. Like, but you didn't even, anyways, it was just miserable.
Did it last a long time, the burn?
It was about like a week from start to finish, probably a week to 10 days. I would say once I saw the first few blisters, and I'm really weird about skin stuff. So once I saw it, I was like immediately in denial because I was so afraid. I was like, it's fine. Everything's fine. And then like, I had to wrap my forearms because it was so bad and so oozy and so painful and so itchy. And yeah, I don't do well with like prolonged pain like that. Actually I have really high pain tolerance if I'm getting like a tattoo or something, because I know there's an end to this. I can see it. But yeah, that wild parsnip like really fucked me up. But there's something, there's some sort of other parsnip that I see growing around here that is not, it doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah.
Cow parsnip?
Yeah, cow parsnip. Some people, cow parsnip.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like lookalikes in that family. It's in the carrot family. So
funny.
Yeah, Queen Anne's lace. Also poison hemlock is in that family, and water hemlock, but Angelica also, and
really?
Osha.
I love Osha. I work with Angelica and Osha a lot. I've been taking Osha roots since like COVID first happened. Like every day I would just take some Osha. And now it's like comforting to me. Now I want to take it. Like at first I couldn't, like the taste was like, oh my gosh, this is so intense. But now it's like, I crave the taste of Osha.
It's a really special plant.
I love that. You were talking earlier about like the propaganda of basically like villainizing the natural world. And so I'm wondering when you first had that connection with poisonous plants, was the inspiration to teach people to kind of like combat that propaganda and to kind of just like, there's more to them than this, than what you're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know why. They were just like, hey.
They wanted you to start a class?
Yeah. And just like a lot of synchronicities kind of led me to doing it. But I mean, for me personally, it was like a continuation of work that I had done previously with wrathful deities, which is something that you see in Tibetan Buddhism, or in different branches of Buddhism and Hinduism, that we've kind of lost in Western religions, but like enlightened forms of deities that are destructive, like Kali commonly is one that people know about.
Solie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
destructive, but she's not doing it from a place of viciousness or anger or resentment or anything like that. Not at all. Like if you ever look at paintings of her, if it's done by someone who actually is in those traditions and understands what Kali is, then her face is peaceful and her tongue might be sticking out. But so, and I've just always, like, since for as long as I can remember, I've always been like, what's death and what's like all these things, what are the I want to know about the things that people are afraid of, that people don't want to talk. I want to like go towards that stuff. So the poisonous plants kind of, it just makes a lot of sense to me that as I got more into herbalism, that those were the plants that were calling to me. But I think that that's been the greatest, one of the greatest impacts is kind of bringing these plants that have been vilified really only in the last like 100, 200 years. Before that, herbalists, even like folk herbalists, were using like quote unquote poisonous remedies frequently. That example of foxglove being a heart medicine, that was discovered because of a folk healer was using it to heal someone who had dropsy, that they were going to die from it, and a Western doctor was like, how did you get cured from your dropsy? You're going to die from this. And the person was like, well, I got this herbal remedy. And this doctor ended up studying it, and for like 30 years dedicated his life to the glycosides and foxglove. And often if you have a heart attack or have heart disease, you'll be getting these like glycosides in your medicine. So much, anyway, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's also something, just like another kind of part of the question there is on like a more spirit level of the plants. I think that these plants are some of the best in showing us these kind of rejected parts of ourselves, parts that we've deemed are bad, things that we've been told not to engage in, that we might feel shame around. I feel like these plants have a really, they're kind of like keyed into those places, into shadow work, what I would call shadow work, which to me is basically just our shadows are like anything that we've rejected within ourselves. And these plants are like, we're not, through their kind of poison, I think they kind of show us the places where we've felt poisoned within ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think that I fully understood what shadow work meant until I accidentally fell into it. I think like 2 weeks ago, I was just listening to a podcast, minding my own business. Then all of a sudden, like, I feel like there was something subconscious or energetic in this podcast because they were talking about music and it was just so random, but it like literally sparked something inside of me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to change my entire life plan. And so then it started with that. I was like,
Nice.
guys, it's 1 p.m. Can we give me a warning before I need to change everything about my life? And then I realized like within that one thought led me down, 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 down. And it really did feel like a descent into like myself. And then I realized like I was denying a fundamental truth about myself because I didn't want it to be true and I thought it was bad. And it was very simple. It was just that like I consider myself to be a shapeshifter, and that sounds more poetic than like it presents sometimes. It literally just means like I can commit to one lifestyle, one place of work, one style, fashion style, hairstyle, kind of almost personality traits for like a year, and then I have to like completely pivot and do something else. And it was such like, I guess when I realized it was shadow work was in the moment I realized that, oh my God, this is a fundamental truth about myself that presents itself to me, whether I want it to or not. But I don't like it about myself because of like my conditioning. And then I was like, holy shit, I think this is like the definition of shadow work. And it can be as something as like, I mean, I was going to say like lighthearted because it doesn't seem like super traumatizing to feel that way. It's not like sexual trauma or abuse or some sort of, but it's like it. And I think I was looking at shadow work as just those topics, but shadow work is things about ourselves that, we are denying or pushing down or repressing. And that was something that I've been repressing for so long, because it's like, I want a part of me wants to like fit in, a part of me wants to just like have a huge group of friends, a huge family, and like be satisfied working one job and like having one home and having a garden, just like stability, right? Like I really just like am longing for that, but that's just not it's not who I am. And I think that I'm finally like ready to accept that and ready to work on the parts of me that think that there's something bad about that, because like everything in our society tells us that that's bad.
Yeah.
So that's like my most recent. I was like 8 hours of like crying and laughing and journaling and like alone in my room. I didn't want to talk to anybody for like 3 days. I was like, I need to just be with myself in this process. And I was like, oh shit, I think this is shadow work. Like I think that I'm in the depths of like some aspect of myself that I have put away into my shadow. So and it came on, I mean, it was after I took your class, and because I just took your most recent, the level 1. But it's just, I think that it's just been like a theme a lot lately, especially like collectively. I think 2020 was like a year of like collective shadow work, whether you wanted to participate in it consciously or not. And so I think like things kind of hit me afterwards. And anyways, that's just like one example of shadow work, but it was almost like a death process. Like a part of me, a version of myself that I used to identify with died that day. And it is really beautiful that in your work you found that these poisonous plants and the poisonous plant energy and consciousness can like help us get to these places with love and with I feel like love is such a general or like generic word for like this energy that we're all like talking about, but it is like in its essence, it is love. But through love and like through like hard, like holding up a mirror, like like I just feel like that's what a lot of the journeys that we did together in class. It was just like, I feel like I'm seeing all these symbols, I'm going all these places, and then I realize it's almost like I'm having a mirror held up to me, and I'm just like watching. But I think that it's something like outside of myself that's happening. I don't know. I'm kind of going all over the place.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that distinction that you're making. Because I almost feel like the word shadow work is like dead because the majority, anytime I see somebody, some like Instagram therapist or like something talking about shadow work, I'm like, you don't know what this is. Like you're misrepresenting what this is. And so I think, a lot of times people think it's just trauma, or it's like what I would call like big T trauma, like events that are like super traumatic. And that's really the only type of trauma that we kind of recognize societally. But then there's little T traumas. There's, having like, maybe you didn't have a parent that hit you, but maybe every day they told you like, oh, is that what you're going to wear? Oh, you're gaining a little weight, or, oh, your hair is not right, or you gotta be in this class. Your sister got an A, and she took this, or whatever it is. That's trauma. It doesn't happen as like a massive event. It might not seem that obvious, and you might say to yourself, well, I didn't have it that bad because my parent didn't hit me, but there was this kind of these little traumas constant that like chip away at us. And then also like I think of shadow work as your gifts as well are often your shadows. Like, so if you grew up and you knew that you could have these like amazing communications with animals, and I don't know what your parents were like, but if they told you that's not good, like that's made up, you're just pretending, or like worse, if they were like, that's the devil speaking through the animals or some kind of thing, or that's mental illness or something like that. Then now you've repressed that gift that you have, you've put it into the shadow and you've ignored it. And I think that's how most people like live their whole lives, where they have these like beautiful gifts that they came into the world, but then whether it's their parents or even societally, because society I feel like if I went to a regular therapist, your run of the mill therapist, they might think I was like schizophrenic. They might try to like lock me up if I said I talk to plants or like I can hear plants. That because so it's like this constant reinforcement that your kind of gifts, if your gifts aren't around being a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor or a teacher or something that's like acceptable, or business, exploiting people, that's like the best gift that you can have in our world is if you're good at exploiting others. Then you're shamed. Then you're in subtle ways, sometimes not so subtle, sometimes really subtle, of just, oh, well, how are you going to make money? How are you going to do that? Like, oh, most people who try to do that, they fail. You're going to end up homeless, blah, 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 whatever it is. But then I see like shadow work presented as something that's like just like these big traumas, or like you're supposed to like embrace these negative qualities that you have, these like you're supposed to like wear all black, or and then be like, yeah, like I'm manipulative and I'm happy about it, or like some like weird, like that is not, no, like not necessarily, not like rejecting those aspects of yourself, but like integrating, healing them, not like giving them a place at the table necessarily.
Yeah. And I think too, what you're saying about your, like, if you went to somebody and you were like a therapist, they could diagnose you. And I think that in that situation, or just thinking about that in general with like my animal communication, or just even just my own experiences with seeing energy, feeling energy, being more sensitive to like the other realities that exist within this reality. It's the importance of like trusting that inner guidance. And that's something that I think is also a part of my shadow, is that for so long, like I've been like such an insecure kid. I never fit in with my family. So I was always like trying to fit in with my family. And I was always like not sure who I was, because and a shape-shifting feels, I think it like sounds really badass to say that I'm like a shapeshifter. But sometimes it just presents itself. It's something so simple. Like I'm into this hobby one week and I'm into this another one. And as I get more sensitive and I grow older, it's literally like, it's like day by day, sometimes hour by hour. Like my energy will be low. Next second, it's like really high. And then I'm into this and I'm into that. But I was always like looking outside of myself as at a young age for somebody to like tell me who I was, because like I struggled with knowing. I didn't have like, I am Ashley and like this is my favorite color, this is my favorite food, this is my best friend. Like things just changed all the time. So I was like really frustrated about that. So anyways, that's like kind of bled into my work with my own meditations and my own conversations about like esoteric woo stuff, is like, even with people that I like trust in like the spiritual community, that like are speaking my same language, I find myself like almost going too far into like, oh, well, you know, I'm trying to manifest this into my life. I should do it how they said that they did it, because then it worked for them. And then I try to do it for me and it just doesn't work. And so I think that that's like another like part of just trusting that inner guidance. Because when I do just follow that, like things seriously like unfold like just so naturally. But there's so much fear because I don't see anybody else kind of doing what I'm doing, you know. And I'm not saying that like it's not like from an ego place. It's literally from a place of like fear. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to take this leap. I want to see if I could see somebody else that took a leap and it worked out for them, and then maybe I'll be more confident taking it. But I don't see that in my life. So I'm like, oh fuck, I think I just have to like take a leap into the abyss and see what happens. And it is so scary to follow that inner guidance for me. And I'm wondering if it was for you too, when you like first started. I mean, you, from what I know about you, it's like you've been communicating with plants from childhood. And I believe that I was too. I mean, there was like this whole other world in the forest in my backyard where I could like, there was all these beings that I met, and it's like the bugs and the leaves and the trees. And so I was always there, and I carry that with me inside of me. But yeah, what did that fear, like, did that fear present itself for you? And what carries you, this is probably a deep question or big question, but like what carries you like past that fear? Is there any sort of
Mhm.
like, do you get validation from your work? Do you
Mhm.
just trust? Like, what does that look like?
Um, well, first, I just want to say, like, I'm glad that you're following your intuition, like following the path that you're like really here to be doing. And something I'm like always asking is like, what would happen in our world if everybody learned how to trust who they really are?
Mm-hmm.
Like what you're doing, like you said, like no one else is doing it. Like imagine all the other things that no one else is doing. And like everyone listening to this, if you feel like you're not following like that, who you really are, like there's something that you have to offer that no one else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's maybe other people are doing it, but you have a different perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so for me with poisonous plants, there are other, it's a pretty small group of, I mean, it's growing, but especially when I was starting, the group of people like working with it was really small. But there were still people doing it. And I could have said, well, someone else is doing it, but I have like a really different perspective on it than I saw anybody else talking about it. And was really surprised. I thought when I did the first class that no one was going to sign up because I was used to. I've been teaching meditation since I was like 20 and like different things, and a lot of the time classes wouldn't run because there wouldn't be enough signups. So I was like, well, this is such a niche topic. Like, who's going to sign up for this? And it was not the case at all. It's been like pretty big classes for like the last 3 years, and I've been really like blown out of the water. But if I had listened to the voice that said, well, nobody's going to sign up, and then this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be getting to like do this thing that I love so much. And I guess I think sometimes answering your question, I feel um, kind of like an asshole or just like because I feel like I didn't really have to learn how to do it. I think I have like a lot of I think I'm open-minded, but I'm also like very stubborn about certain things. Like I've always been that way. I think I have like just a lot naturally in me, like in my birth chart or whatever. That's like um I don't know, like a certain kind of like fearlessness or like stubbornness, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. Like, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to do it. Um, and I've had a lot of not great times in my life, but starting when I was like 18, I kind of when I was really like an adult and I could make decisions for myself, I started making decisions based on intuition. I was like, I'm going to move to Colorado. I don't know why. I'm just going to go there because I feel like it. And I ended up getting so much that I needed from living there and making like all these kind of big life choices based on just these like gut feelings that I had. Even moving here to Fairfield, to Iowa. Like I was telling you before we recorded, this is a small town. I've never lived in a small town. It's like really kind of different than what I'm used to. And but I trust that there's something here that I'm like needing to do, or there's something that I'm supposed to learn here, someone I'm supposed to meet, or whatever it is. So when I hear those like voices of fear come up, which I have, in the past, I would like kind of repress them, kind of push them down and build an identity on top of it of like, oh, I'm not going to listen to that voice. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to listen to this voice that is afraid. But now I listen to the voice and I'm like, what do you need? What are you afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's like a little part of myself that's like, well, what if people don't like you? What if you say the wrong thing and people get mad at you? And, or, like just a little kid part of myself that's trying to protect me from being hurt. And I think that's for like pretty much all of us, or there's some trauma, whether it's like a big T trauma or a little T trauma that happens that makes me question whether I'm good enough or whether I'm lovable or whether what I have to offer is a valid. Or, anytime I get like feedback from somebody that like they don't like something I did, it's like devastating to a part of me where I'm like, oh my God, I'm like so bad, unlovable, nobody likes me, like
Mm-hmm.
just stuff that got imprinted in me when I was really young that I'm still like working through. But Yeah, I guess every time it comes up, I kind of look at it as an opportunity to like process more trauma and to keep just trusting, even when it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting what I'm like feeling in my gut, so to speak, or my heart, or my third eye, depending on what language you want to use. You know.
Yeah. I will say when you were talking, it's also like, and I struggle with this, but it's also just cool to know your strengths, and it's cool to know like
Mm-hmm.
I'm Kathryn, and I just like I know that I just have a natural ability to talk to plants, and just because like
Mm-hmm.
other people can't do it doesn't mean that like you're bragging or that like you're
Right.
better than them. Or um I struggle with saying anything nice about myself because my mom would
Mm.
always say, if I started to say it, she'd be like, well, don't get a big head about it. Well, don't
Mm.
do this. And it's like, that just comes from her own struggles of, that's just her trauma and just her like projecting that onto me.
Mm.
And so like, I struggle with, I like compliments, but like, I get like, oh, now I'm going to compliment you like 10 times over, it's like, it's hard for me to like
Mm.
receive. And
Yeah.
it's also hard for me to just be like, I am Ashley and these are my strengths.
Yeah.
Because I like don't want anybody to feel like diminished in their
Right.
abilities because of mine, but that's not like
Right. So
my
you should just
responsibility.
diminish yourself instead.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So
That's
like I'll just make myself small.
right.
And like I don't know if you I have like a team of like energetic beings I call like my guides. Sometimes I just call them my team, but we'll just like talk. It's like
Mm.
you think you're having an original thought, but if you sit back, at least for me, I'm like, oh, this is my guides, like this is my
Mm.
team. And I was walking in the woods yesterday and it was like, I mean, you can make yourself small so that other people won't criticize you, but they'll criticize you whether you make yourself small or not. Like there's always going to be somebody like pushing back on you, whether you're your truest self or you're not. So you might as well just like be your truest self. Like
Yeah.
having that fear of that criticism, and it just seems like such like a basic idea or something. But there I go, like diminishing like this profound idea that I had, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, it's so basic and common, but it's like, well, it was huge for me in that moment yesterday of
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh yeah, like I'm just constantly making myself small so that I can raise other people up. But like, who does that serve? Like, who does it serve for me to like make myself small? Who does it serve for me to like deny things about myself? And like, I want to be of service to others. And I realized like in that moment that it doesn't serve me because I'm not being honest, and it doesn't serve others because I'm not being honest with them and I'm not allowing space for them to be honest. So it like literally serves nobody, like some of these
Yeah.
like habits that I have. And it was just like this moment of like, oh shit, okay, well, like it doesn't serve anybody, so why do I keep doing it? And it's just fear. It's like that little kid that's inside of me, and sometimes I feel like it's like a little puppy inside of me, or like a little kid that's just like, well,
Mm.
I'm just afraid that nobody will like me and that I won't fit in and this and that. And it's like, well, you already struggle with feeling like people like you, that's what you get reflected back to you, is that people won't like you or that you don't fit in. You've struggled with that your whole life, so why not just like notice it and integrate it? And the word integrate can seem like really fancy, and it can seem like a lot of it's like it's too weighted for me. And so that's another word, like shadow
Mm.
work and integration. It's like
Mm.
in the spiritual Instagram, you hear it a lot, and it's like, what does it mean though? What does it
I
mean to
know.
integrate? And it just
Yeah.
for me, it's just like literally just noticing it and like crying,
Mm-hmm.
journaling, seeing it, and then like I think something for me that's been really profound is like, can I love myself today just as I am? Because I feel like I'm constantly striving to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday. And like, while that's obviously like um great to strive for, to some degree I'm like hurt, like I'm not loving myself exactly like as I am. Um and so that's been part of the integration for me, is just being like, well, today, like I didn't feel like I was productive. And I feel like, oh, I had like 5 awkward moments and I didn't make enough money. And so, like,
Mm.
but I still, okay. And then I have to be like, all right. And I love myself, even though I don't feel like I've met the standards that I'm like going for. But it is just beautiful that you and I can have these conversations in this space, and we were brought together by like poisonous plants. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
even like, if we're not sitting and talking about like, working with poisonous plants specifically and what each maybe belladonna's taught us, or foxglove, or yew tree has like taught us. We're still like together now having these conversations, and like poisonous plants was like the bridge for you and I to just sit down today and like have this conversation. So it's like their work is always with us, whether we're like specifically talking about each one and what they can do for us. And so it's just like, it's really beautiful how it all just connects, you know?
Yeah. I know for me, the plants are like gateways into all different types of thinking, all different like parts of ourselves. They can take us to so many places that we are surprised by.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I don't know. I always take like, I'll show you. I took like all these notes. I always take like a bunch of notes before I talk to somebody, and then I think we like got to some of them, but it was just like so many.
I know. I felt like we could keep talking for like long.
I know. Yeah. But you'll just have to come on the podcast again, and you know. But I do think like but anyways, we'll talk a little bit more after I stop the recording, but thanks so much for coming on today. Where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you?
My website, which is kathrynsoli.com. You can find out more about classes that I offer. You can also find my Patreon through my website, and on there I have a bunch of video classes. I have herbal care packages that I send out every month. I think there's like 25 video classes at this point. I put new ones on each month that are about an hour long each, and on topics like plant medicine, tarot, finding your genius, like finding your path in life, all kinds of things like that. And on Instagram, I go by Persephone's Path, which the Greek goddess of springtime and queen of the underworld is Persephone. I think that's
great. I love that. That's such a you're like queen of the underworld and of springtime. It's like it can be both things. I love that. So yeah, awesome. Well, I always get really awkward at the end of these because I say goodbye like 5 times and thank you like 20 times. So maybe we'll just like, I'm like, okay, thank you and goodbye, and we'll see you next time. And so all of those awkward moments pointed at you now. But anyways, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
And thank you and goodbye. And